Kaha Mora Swarup Rupa Kaha Sanata Kahadasa Bhaganatha Patita Pava Kahadasa Bhaganatha Patita Pava Kahamora Batajuga Kaha Kavira Ekakale Kota Kela Nata Pashane Kutibo Mata Anale Pashivo Pashane Kutibo Mata Anale Pashivo Gauranga Kunera Nirikota Kilepabo Some of you are coming in a little too early on the first note. Se Sabo Sangira Sange Ye Koilo Bila Ise Sanga Sangira Sange Ye Koilo Sangha Napaya Kande Narottamada Sangha Napaya Kande Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaja ki jai. Jai Om Vishnu Pada Paramahamsa Parivajacharya Ashram Sata Shri the A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Gauranitai ki jai. Shri Krishna Balaram ki jai. Shri Radha Govinda Madhava ki jai. Shri Radha Shama Sundar ki jai. Shri Radha Partha Sarati ki jai. Gaura Prema, all glorious to the Assembled. All glorious to Shri Guru Krishna Vistaya Bhutale, Mate Bhakti Vedanta Shrimati. Namaste Saraswati Devi, Gauravani Kuchagine, Nirvasesha Srinivadi Prasti Chardeshita. Om Jnana Kimrandasya Gananjana Shalakana Chakshuranal Melitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Shapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadam Tadati Svahatam Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Gopal Krishna Goswami Iti Namane. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namane. Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvasesha Sunyavadi Paschatade Satarine Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Vipasindubhye Vicha Patitanam Pavane Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Shivasadi Gauravantam Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, I thought we would just read one verse, maybe two verses before we hear a little bit about His Holiness Gopal Krishna Maharaj. And these verses are from the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. I believe it's on the verses on the board, is that right? 1869. So please repeat. Na cha tasman manusheshu Kaschin me priyakritamaha Bhavita na cha me tasmad Anyak priyataro bhuvi Na cha tasman manusheshu Kaschin me priyakritamaha Bhavitana cha me tasmad Anyak priyataro bhuvi This verse is familiar to probably most of you here today. Anyone like to repeat the verse?
Nachatasman manusheshu Kashrin me priya kitama Bhavita nacha me tasmad Anya priyataro bhuvi
Nachatasman manusheshu Kachin me priyakritamaha Bhavita nacha me tasmad Anya priyataro bhuvi
Nachatasman manusheshu Kashrin me priya kitamaha Bhavita nacha me tasmad Anya priyataro bhuvi
Ladies.
Nachatasman
manusheshu Kaschin me priyakritamaha Bhavita nacha me tasmad Anya priyataro bhuvi. I'll just go on to the translation of this verse. Krishna, this is one of the concluding verses of the Bhagavad Gita. Some of Krishna's, in fact, almost his last words. There's a few more verses. Where he says, there is no servant in this world more dear to me than he, nor will there ever be one more dear. What is this referring to? Which servant? One who preaches this message of Bhagavad Gita, particularly to the devotees. First, we understand that intrinsically, constitutionally, everyone is a devotee. Prabhupada describes how the pure devotees of the Lord are more merciful than Krishna. That's conceivable. Why? Because they are representing Srimati Radharani, who is personification of compassion. Deep word. But what is that message of Bhagavad Gita that makes one so dear to Krishna, if you appreciate it? What is that message? Is it Denosmin Yatadehe? What is it? Is it Sarvadharman Parityagya? Is it Manmana Bhava Madbhakto? Which is it? Many other verses are there. All absolutely relevant. But the ultimate message of Bhagavad Gita, which is really, you could say, the beginning of spiritual life, is Manmana Bhava Madbhakto. That's the beginning, practically. Yes, it's the conclusion of the Bhagavad Gita in one sense. But it's the beginning, you could say, of one's pure devotional service. Manmana Bhava Madbhakto. That's the message that's to be preached. Of course, it may not be preached immediately. Everything that Srila Prabhupada has given us in terms of temples, books, processes, and all the other variations of services which we have are to bring us to this point. This is the objective goal of sadhana, isn't it? To remember Krishna. Don't we repeat that verse? What is that verse? Smartavya satatam Vishnu. Who knows that verse? Vishmartavna jatachit. The purpose of all of the practices and regulations is to remember Krishna, isn't it? Should we not question ourselves if we're not remembering Krishna? That's the purpose of this movement. To remember Krishna and remind others, or at least to prepare the way. It's like we're preparing the soil so that Giri Govardhan Prabhu has for decades been worshipping the Lord by growing roses for the Lord's pleasure. He has to prepare the soil for months before he can grow those roses. And it doesn't stop there. There's so many other things, but the soil has to be prepared. You can't just put the rose into a stone. The soil has to be ready. So this movement is also preaching a message of remembrance to Krishna to others, to prepare them so that they come to the point of being able, let's say, being able to hear about Krishna. That's what this basically temples are for. Places where people can come and hear about Krishna. Yes, we have to wash the pots, we have to clean the floor, we have to worship the deity. Of course, that's central to everything. So many management is there, and fundraising is there, and festivals, and so many things. But the ultimate purpose behind it is to remind us of Krishna, isn't it? If we come here and think of ourselves, we're not getting very far. Half the time we're just thinking of our crazy nonsense, our illusions, total illusions. But it's really not. It's meant to transcend all of this. Of course, it takes time. It takes a lot of work. A lot of Prabhupada had to dedicate his blood. Like Bhakti Siddhanta Maharaj said that every member of this Gaudiya Math, kind-hearted devotee in this Gaudiya Math, has to be willing to shed 200 gallons of blood for the spiritual corpus of every conditioned soul. That means you have to give your It's pretty hard work, even if you are a realized soul, to bring others to this point of realizing. The previous verse, we've already mentioned it, that one who preaches this message of Bhagavad Gita to the devotees, Maharaja mentioned, one who explains this supreme secret. He's not even preaching the message. This secret of the Bhagavad Gita, man mana bhava mad bhakto. This is what it means to surrender. It's not some kind of, bow down, mister, surrender, else. It's actually to give up all other, religion means all other thoughts, basically. To give up all these other things which we think are so damned important in our minds. This thing, that thing. And just focus on what will please Krishna. What does Krishna want? What is our real position? We only exist for the pleasure of Krishna. We have no other purpose of existence. Everything else is a horror movie. Relatively speaking. We exist for the pleasure of Krishna. Bhagavad Gita is to help us to realize that, to come to the point where we accept that fact and live by it. So one who explains his supreme secret, it's like explaining something to a child. You don't start off at the end, you start at the beginning. But you don't stay at the beginning. If all you teach your child is 2 + 2 = 4, that's correct. But that's not enough. That's the beginning, isn't it? But that's the foundation. If you don't have a foundation, you don't get much of a building. Foundation has to be there. Growth has to be there. So let's go, anyway, we could go on and on. Why I'm bringing it up? Because Gopal Krishna Maharaj, I would say, exemplifies this aspect, Srila Prabhupada's unlimited compassion by facilitating the conditioned soul's opportunity to become Krishna conscious. He worked tirelessly throughout his life, unwavering. I never ever saw a moment, and of course I didn't know him very intimately, but I never saw a moment that he was not engaged in devotional service to Srila Prabhupada and his mission. Not a moment. Some people may, from their imperfect perception, say, well, he had this and that, or he made a mistake, or this. But who are we to judge? A mistake is not an external measure. A mistake is when the internal intention is other than fulfilling the mission of one's spiritual master in Krishna. That's a mistake. Anything separate from that is a mistake. In the course of trying to serve the will of the spiritual master, if it appears from other conditioned souls' imperfect perception that a mistake has been made, that's simply what we can say, another aspect of the illusory energy. He exemplified this complete, absolute surrender, you could say. Putting aside just about everything else. Such an austere. I saw in his will, he was saying, one of the things he mentioned in his final will was, please, don't go away and try to find an easy life, an easy path. That's not the business of a devotee in one sense. What does it mean, an easy path? That's another topic. But, it isn't always easy to try to preach Krishna consciousness, especially in an institutional situation. Everyone's got their own, idea of everything. And it's difficult to change that so that it becomes, Krishna's idea rather than our idea. I like, I don't like, etc., etc. It's a real challenge. And most people are pretty messed up, even materially. It's very hard to do that. And Prabhupada, if you read Leela Amrita, which is only a drop in the ocean, What Prabhupada had to deal with when he first started this movement. Kind of incredible craziness and challenges which he had to do throughout, even to the last breath. He sacrificed for the welfare or the sake of others. And I would say, from my experience, which is whatever limited experience it is, Gopal Krishna Maharaj followed that mood of Srila Prabhupada throughout his life. Some of you may feel differently, so everyone's entitled, of course, to our own impressions, but we're trying to share something here which might, might be relevant to us. So let's read something a little bit about. I think you spoke a little bit, Maharaj, the other day. I don't know what you spoke. What did you speak? What did you say?
I have also written.
No, what did you speak the other day on Sunday? Did you talk about his history? What did you talk about?
His services. His services to ISKCON, his loyalty to the movement.
Okay, great.
And he would travel also, even if he come back at 2 o'clock, but he would be on the altar at 4:30.
Amazing, huh? Thank you. So there's no harm in hearing this again and again, is there? We forget. Sometimes we don't even clean. Not just with brushes and pans, but in terms of, our behavior, our practices, our chastity to Prabhupada, and so on. His whole life was based on that. Trying to protect Prabhupada's movement and sustain it. If you read his will, you'll see how much his heart. But one unique thing, he had amazing respect for anyone outside of Prabhupada's immediate ISKCON, you can say. Any other Gaudiya Vaishnava, any other, genuine spiritual person, he was so respectful in their presence. It wasn't like, looking down or, sideline. Very respectful, but 100% chaste to Prabhupada's movement. Dedicated. He made that the instructions of Srila Prabhupada his life and soul for sure. Absolutely. And we all know, especially in terms which we'll come on to now, some of the special features of that service to Prabhupada. When I first met Srila Prabhupada, he said, the motivation to surrender to Krishna or God, it was already there. It was in me there somewhere. And 2 weeks after meeting him, I knew that Lord Krishna wanted me to surrender to Srila Prabhupada. He very quickly realized that my life is meant. Krishna wants me to surrender. Excuse me. He said, I did not know the importance of hearing at that time. This is a little akin to Srila Prabhupada's personal experience in some ways too. But my only small qualification was that I was very respectful to Srila Prabhupada from the very first day I saw him. And I would stay for his lectures till the end and leave only after he had left the temple. Even he said he didn't really necessarily understand what was going on or what it was all about, but he would never leave. He would stay and listen. And we know that from Srila Prabhupada's own personal testimony, that he would stay, listen to his own Guru Maharaj, even if he didn't understand, of course. Prabhupada says like that. And that, he said, was my qualification. And that was the qualification. Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj said, he's qualified because he hears nicely. This hearing from the Guru. Yes, so we'll move on. And then, we're moving on a little bit. Prabhupada was in Montreal for 3 months. That's the time when he trained. How can you describe them? The 3 couples who went to London. That incredible warriors of Lord Chaitanya's and Srila Prabhupada's mission, who went into the battlefield, into Europe, and spread Krishna consciousness in Europe. Shyam Sundar and all the others. Yeah, all of them. They trained, Prabhupada trained them there how to preach in this place. And he was there during that time. He was coming every day practically to hear from Prabhupada in Montreal. And he was still working. He continued to work for quite some time. Prabhupada continued to encourage him to work. But it was amazing how from that time, Prabhupada, he was writing. And of course he'd write to Gopal Krishna would write to Prabhupada. And Prabhupada would write back every 2 weeks almost, for months and months and months after that. Letters were coming back and forth between Prabhupada and Gopal Krishna. Right from the beginning, even though he was not initiated. It was something very intimate there, something very special going on. So we went forward a little bit here to 69. He wasn't initiated yet. This is March. Prabhupada wrote a letter to him and he said, your desire for opening many temples is very laudable. Just see. Even then he was thinking, I want to open many temples. He wasn't initiated. Just came. He said, I want to open up many temples. Prabhupada said, your desire is very laudable. You know what laudable means? Huh? Very appreciated. You're highly appreciated. highly appreciated. But unless you prepare some unless you prepare some temple worshippers, then the temples will remain vacant. We're not here just to open temples. Purpose is that, people come. Devotees. There's got to be devotees in the temple to worship. It should be organic. Sometimes things are not so organic. We kind of dump things on a small number. But everything grew organically during Prabhupada's time. The temple was just a room. Nothing more than a room in the beginning. One room. And gradually as numbers grew, then buildings grew also. Prabhupada was seeing the future. So he was seeing, like somewhere or another, he was thinking in his heart, many temples which happened. Not just in Delhi, dozens and dozens of other temples he oversaw and opened, so to speak, or inspired others to open. In Bombay, in Punjab, in all different areas of India, in Uttar Pradesh, and so many places, Haryana, and so on. Prabhupada then went on to say, so in this age it is more important to create devotees than to construct temples. My Guru Maharaj advised me to give more stress on literary work, such as publishing books and magazines in Krishna consciousness, and temple opening is a secondary. That was not the first letter by any means, but that was one of the first indicative letters from Srila Prabhupada to Gopal Krishna Maharaj about his future. And you see the temples are not empty. Not like the Hindu temples you go to. Nobody's there except for a priest who pokes his nose out whenever anyone comes. Or does an arti every now and again. Isn't it? They're flourishing. There's hundreds of devotees everywhere. Hundreds of thousands of people coming. Hundreds of thousands. And hundreds of devotees. None of these temples has less than 30 brahmacharis. Some of them 200 brahmacharis. Not to speak of the grihasthas. Hundreds, and you've seen in Noida. Lokanath Maharaj is one of the closest friends of Gopal Krishna Maharaj. They've worked together for decades in India preaching to spread Prabhupada's mission and overseas. So anyway, different letters. Another one comes, that was in March, also in April, because he was working for Pepsi Cola as what was he doing? Marketing. What does that mean? Sales. How to sell Pepsi Cola. He was trained in sales. Distribution of a product. So Prabhupada wrote, so my immediate best service for you is to help organize the sale promotions of my books. That was before he was initiated. You see these two, probably from, perspective point of view, probably the two most prominent, I may be wrong, but it looks to me the two most prominent features of his, let's say quantitative contribution. Book distribution, production, and temple opening, isn't it? And making devotees. I don't know how many disciples he got. 30,000, someone told me. 30,000 disciples. I don't know if it's true. Someone mentioned 30,000 disciples the other day. I don't know if it's true. But he's got a lot. Mostly in India, but all over the world also. In Russia also. He preached, he was one of the first, Mandakini was the first Westerner after Prabhupada left in, 71. When he went to Moscow, the next person to go was Mandakini, your French Mandakini was the next Western devotee to go to Moscow, but then he was the next, because Prabhupada made him a GBC of Moscow, of Russia, in 1976. He made him the GBC. So he was going there, in disguise, of course, primarily introducing Prabhupada's books in, official circles. Book fairs, shops, like libraries, this sort of thing. He brought Prabhupada's books in like that, through official channels. Okay? And then in May 69, Srila Prabhupada wrote to say, there's a lot of other letters in between if you want to read, but we're not going to mention them. Different things were going on. As your name is already Gopal Krishna, there is no need for changing it. You will now be known as Gopal Krishna Das. So that was 1969 in May. 25 years old, I guess, at that time. Regarding back to Godhead, Prabhupada wrote a few days after his initiation. I wish you take charge of organizing the sales in the libraries. If you write letters on behalf of the society, will that not be good? I suggest that you may take a little responsibility for organizing the sales, and wherever you will direct, they will dispatch the sample copies. In other words, Prabhupada wanted to take charge for the distribution of Back to Godhead. Marketing. Right from the word go, he was involved in distributing Prabhupada's books in a very, not a small time running on the street, but organized way. You can, another letter which came, actually it's interesting, Hamburg. Prabhupada wrote a letter to him in September 69. He was probably in Hamburg. And Prabhupada said, Bible, that God is for the humble and meek, Prabhupada wrote. Prabhupada's writing. The Bible, that God is for the humble and meek. He just summarized. Similarly, Vaishnavas are taught by Lord Chaitanya to become humbler than the grass, more tolerant than the tree. Now, Gopal Krishna Maharaj certainly was a personification, although not everyone can understand this, of humility and tolerance. Tolerance, yes. Humility, yes. But how? If you remember, when Hari Vilas Prabhu asked Srila Prabhupada in Paris, what is humility? What did Prabhupada say?
It's when you know that your bank account or everything will not save you.
Nothing in this world will save you. Absolutely nothing. Neither your wife, neither your money, neither everything. Only Krishna can save you. When you're convinced of that, that is humility. If you think anything else other than Krishna can protect us, or if you think anything else belongs to anyone but Krishna, that was his life. He said, nothing for me, everything for Krishna. And if you read his will, you can see a lot of people, they think that the leaders of our movement, hopefully there's no exceptions to this, have a huge bank account in Zurich with countless billions of dollars in their bank account in Zurich. Famous place to keep your Swiss bank account, isn't it? So if you do hear or read his will, you'll see how much money he had in his Swiss bank account. Well, first of all, he doesn't have one. He has a bank account in America, and he has $2,000 in there. Only reason is because he has to keep it there, otherwise he loses his green card for America. And it's not even in his name. It's a mixed account. He's just one of the signers on the account. So he left all of his property, which amounted to, in value, huge amounts. Not one property was in his name anywhere. Not one vehicle, not one property, nothing. Absolutely nothing was in his name. He had no bank account in India, none. He had some clothes, which he said you can distribute amongst my disciples, do as you wish. He said my deities are the main thing. They must be worshipped on the temple altars in the various temples. Otherwise, I'm afraid that somebody may take them and stop worshipping them. And that will not be good. So they should not be taken by an individual, but worshipped on the temple altars. And he said, I've got one, I have a computer and 2 mobiles for their worth. My secretary can decide what he wants to do with those. And other than that, he said, I've got one valuable possession, a Rolex watch. Ah, got him. We got him. These big swamis wearing their Rolex watches. He said that was a gift from Srila Prabhupada. in 1977. That's all he had in his will. His will was all about remaining faithful to Srila Prabhupada and dedicating yourself to the mission. That's all. That's the real wealth, not $1 million, billion in a bank account in Zurich. Who cares for that? That cannot protect us. But this spirit which he has is that's humility. Total dependence on Krishna and Prabhupada. Amazing. Humble and meek. They inherit the kingdom of God. And then in October of 69, Prabhupada wrote to him, you can take charge of printing the French edition of Back to Godhead. He wrote to Gopal Krishna. French edition. He spoke French. He was in Montreal. There was no edition in Paris or in France at that time. That is nice, but the thing is, it must be regularly published every month. Again, just a few weeks later, Prabhupada wrote, the more you serve Krishna, the more you get better strength to serve him. In other words, the more you sacrifice and give your everything, whatever little Krishna has given us, we offer that in service, then the more strength we get. Otherwise we get weak if we hold back. A few weeks later, Prabhupada wrote, I'm very glad to learn that you are trying to distribute our books. Please continue with this program as it is so very important. Especially try to place our books in the schools and libraries. Our literatures are for the intelligent class also. Again, books, magazines, books. Pushing. You take this on. Anyway, we'll move on. There's many letters in the same light. Interesting, actually, Prabhupada also wrote to him that if he was going to go to Paris, he gave him the address of two devotees. One of them, Janananda, actually came to Paris, the original translator of some book literature in Montreal. And the other devotee, I forgot, his name began with S. What was it? Surdas. And this Surdas was living exactly, you know where we start our Rath, I've got his address, everything, the exact number. He was living exactly where you start your Rath Yatra festival. Right there, exactly, in those buildings, you know, on the angle there, the first devotee was staying in an apartment right there, looking down where now the Rath car sits before you start the Rath parade. The other one, Janananda, was staying in, what was it, somewhere on the eastern suburbs out there, in the eastern suburbs. I've got the address somewhere. I looked it up. It's a fair distance out. And he said, when you go, if you do go, you can stay with them. So that was back in 69. And so then he carried on. He was going to, even when he went to New York, he was still working for Pepsi Cola. He probably still encouraged him, help to organize the distribution of my books. It was always in that regard, because you were a sales marketer. It's your profession. So he was doing that, and then eventually, of course, he gave up everything, and Prabhupada asked him then to come to India, and made him GBC in 1975 after Tamal left of India, the whole of India, GBC. And then 76, GBC for Russia. USSR in those days. So he was overseeing all these projects in India, Hyderabad, Bombay, even Mayapur at that time, he was GBC, in the whole of India. And even now, he's probably was GBC for probably half of India, I don't know, a large area of India, he was still GBC. And these places, Mumbai, where his parents were living, his parents moved to Mumbai. And so he also had a strong input into the Mumbai, into preaching in Mumbai. Another temple just opened a few months ago in Mumbai, in Thane.
Bureau somehow.
Huh?
A bureau member.
He was not just only a bureau, he was, well, maybe not recently, but he was the head of many of the BBT, he was chairman of the BBT trusts, head of the Indian Bureau, ISKCON management organization. So many things he was involved in. So pretty much, almost there was nothing. He was concerned about every little detail and every So much involved in so many things. Prabhupada, right from the beginning when he came to India, Gopal Krishna said, Srila Prabhupada was anxious that book printing in India should expand. There was none at that time. None. None at all. And he put, Gopal Krishna, you have to make this happen. During my first 2 years, he would press me again and again to print more and more books. Srila Prabhupada was especially pleased when we presented him copies of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam in Hindi. So we encouraged him. Now, Prabhupada said, you can utilize your knowledge for marketing for Krishna's service. In every way, he was so expert. This is the perfection, Prabhupada said, of education. When you use your talents, your education, for propagating Krishna consciousness. In 1981, he took sannyas after Prabhupada departed, of course. And in 1982, he was asked to start initiating. So history speaks for itself after that. The openings of temples all over India and in Russia too. He was actively preaching in Russia. Many, many disciples in Russia. He inspired them to open many temples throughout Russia also. His sadhana was impeccable, as Maharaj may have mentioned the other day. Absolutely like clockwork. Every morning up, sharp, 2, 3 o'clock at the latest. Every morning, whichever temple he was in, he would be on the altar offering Mangal Arti. Even as you said, he only slept 2 hours. He was still offering Mangal Arti. In fact, he rarely slept more than 2 or 3 hours. He didn't sleep much. Very, very little. 3, 4 hours a day, maybe. And his eating, I know from experience, he was eating very little. And very, very simple. We took lunch together just last month. He just took 1 bowl of soup, that was all. Simple soup. Never had anything else. Probably ate something later in the day, but it was very little. And he was always like that. He didn't eat much. He hadn't enough time for these things. His mind was too focused on the mission. Spreading Krishna consciousness. No time to get into this. Sometimes we have no time for the mission. We're too busy eating and sleeping. I've got no time, Prabhu. I've got to sleep. I'm tired. I haven't had enough to eat. I've got to find something decent to eat. They only had rice and dal for lunch today. What is this? I'm not going to do any service if they feed me like that. That's not the mood of devotion, I can tell you that. Yes, we should try to make Prasad nice. And he was very careful, very affectionate too. He had this other side to him. Of course, in institutional open, when there's a million devotees around it, you can't expect much. But otherwise, he had a very concern. How is this one? How is that one? He was very concerned about devotees. And not just the men, the ladies. He was very concerned for all devotees. He had no enemy like that. He didn't consider anyone his enemy. Nobody. He was concerned for everyone. He saw them all as part of Prabhupada's family. Whether they're his disciples or not, that was nothing to do with it. And he worshipped his own deities. He had many deities. And you can see videos of him worshipping his deities, even up to recently. His doctors were trying to tell him, you've got to stop this. Stop going to Mangalarti. Stop worshipping the deities like this. Stop pushing yourself. But he couldn't stop pushing himself. And he left his body in Dehradun 2 days ago. What's he doing in Dehradun? You know where Dehradun is? North of Delhi. It was a famous British kind of station, British administrative station, near one of their favorite, I forgot what it's called, favorite hill stations. They used to go in the summer, it's cooler up there. Just going there for some some meeting they had. I don't know exactly what they're doing, some kind of devotional meeting that some devotees were going to.
Initiation also.
Huh?
It was going to be initiate devotees there also.
He was going to initiate devotees there in Dehradun. I mean, he was going for Purely devotional purposes. It wasn't he's going for a retreat. He never had a retreat. No such thing as a retreat. Always on the attack, always on the battlefield. Right to his last breath, on the battlefield always. He was a real, like Prabhupada, he wanted to leave his body, preaching Krishna consciousness. Of course, the last few moments you could say otherwise, but nobody knows what was going on the last few moments. That's between him, Prabhupada, and Krishna. Such a glorious life and a glorious example to try to, at least try to follow something. Something we can apply in our life. We may not be able to follow it all, but at least something. And the results, and we can see the temples, but just like in Delhi alone, last Christmas marathon, Prabhupada book marathon, the temples together. You know how many Bhagavad Gitas they distributed, those devotees in Delhi? 750,000 Bhagavad Gitas in 1 month. That's something. And who could have imagined that 40 years ago? Just in Delhi, we're not talking to the rest of India. When we had our meeting, the sum up meeting of the campaign, back to whatever it's called, campaign at the end of the year, for how many Bhagavad Gitas were distributed worldwide. And we're going from one to the next. Fiji, whoa, 3,000 Bhagavad Gitas, or whatever, it wasn't even that much. New Zealand, 7,000, France, 7,000, America, 200,000 or whatever it was, Joy, we're increasing. Our target was 4.7 million, and with every other country put together, it came to about 500,000. And we made our target, India, 4.3 million. It was like, we made the target, India made the target, come on. Not that we shouldn't try, but let's face it, what's going on in India is unbelievable. They've got devotees doing, online courses with 700,000 people plugged into one course. Including, they said there were 25 university professors on that course, all chanting 16 rounds now from that course. That's what's happening. This was Prabhupada's will, that Krishna consciousness be preached in India also. And then those devotees will go all over the world and preach. That's what's going to come next. One or two here and there are done. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Holiest Gopal Krishna Maharaj ki jai. O Premanandi.
Hari 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 Bol.
So what time? 12 o'clock? 12 o'clock we'll have Pushpanjali here, Kirtan, and then 1 o'clock lunch, okay? Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. O Premanandi.
Hari Hari Bol.
So you can understand how dear Gopal Krishna Maharaj will be to Krishna and Srila Prabhupada. His dedicated life of devotion. Hare Krishna.